Okay, so we had 300 people in the chat, and once again, now we have 50. Oh, man. Well played, NWO. Well played. And now you're making my hand not be able to open this bottle. And giving me a slight headache. Not everything is a conspiracy, folks. It's most things. Dude, this is the hardest bottle cap. Gosh. Bottle cap was like David Koresh. We're not coming out. We're done. So anyway, I was talking about pale crawler humanoid thing, but and by the way, I wanted to wish David Weatherly a happy birthday. Today's David's birthday, so everybody wish David Weatherly a happy birthday. What the freaking heck was that? Oh, let's see if we can get the numbers back up, man. That once again, we had 300 people in there, and now it's David is one of the people that will be at the conference. Along with a list of other people that's too long to even sit here and read off. So I want to publicly thank Roger Carter for the banner that he made for the conference. That was an epic banner that you made. I appreciate it. You did a great job. And he got together and he worked with me, and then he was working with Mushu and Anthony to try to make it really, really good. The list of people that are going to be at the conference are me, Ken Gerhard, Ron Murphy, Nick Redfern, Bettina Moss, Steve Stockton, Barton Unley, Nick Valente, Jody Cook, Tony Merkel, Jay Vault Tucker, Kenny Irish, Elijah Henderson, David Weatherly, Kumbo Baker, and D.A. Roberts. Every one of these people, oh, and Josh Nanokio. Last but not least, cannot forget him. And if you don't know who he is, you will. Every one of these people does a great job. They are amazing people. There's all these people that are like, oh, I didn't get invited, whatever. I sent an invitation out to Lon Strickler, to Ryan Bowden. They were all busy. And Albert Rosales, if you're listening, you're always welcome to come too. We're going to start at 9 a.m. and we're going to have people talk until 9 at night. That's what I decided. Some people have told me that they don't think that's a good idea. We should end it in the middle of the afternoon. And I think that unless we're all just taking Ambien, I think that's incorrect. I think we should just keep, just go. I think we're going to have we're going to have a panel where we're going to have people that are going to get up there and talk, and people are going to, give their opinions. And some people aren't going to agree and others are going to totally agree. And I think everybody's going to get a different side, and everybody's going to be able to, you know, it's going to be great. Some people are probably going to walk away from this conference thinking there's no way we can top it. And I hope that's the case. But you think that. Then we have to up the ante. Who knows? Or we may never do it again. This may be it. This may not be, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll catch you next year. You're not guaranteed it tomorrow, dude. Some of these people may not be here next year. I may not be here next year. You may not be here next year. And next year may not come. Or it will come and we just decide that we're not going to do another conference. This could be a one and done. So you got to make up your mind. Do you want to take that chance? And because if you don't want to take that chance, then go get a ticket. Go to Eventbrite and buy a ticket while we still got them. Because we sold a lot of tickets really quick. It took 37 minutes to sell out of the VIP tickets. 37, think about that, folks. So all you have now are the general admission, but I mean, general admission, you still get to meet all these people. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff there, dude. A lot of giveaways, a lot of it's going to be epic. Those who go, you won't be disappointed. I'm going to make sure of it. Okay? I'll make sure of it. I'm not going to leave empty-handed. Yeah, Lori Hendricks says if you continue down the road, you can see. Now that's the thing. I'm torn between wanting to video it and then also I don't want to put it out there on a video and then people just say, well, I'm just going to do that and not go. I understand there are those that want to see all these people speak, you know, and then I kind of feel bad about charging people for that too, though, you know. I mean, I can see paying for it in person, but I don't know. I don't know, man. Y'all tell me how you feel about it in the comments. I don't know. Anyways, back to this pale crawler humanoidal thing. If anybody's ever seen anything like this, which I know a lot of you have, send me your story and we'll talk about it. There's a lot of weird stuff out there in this world, dude, and people are seeing it like every day. Heck, I was at the gym the other day and a guy gave me a creepy story, dude. He gave me a weird story. It was so weird. Black goo on the hood of his truck back when it was cold, and he thought, you know, something had fallen on his truck. So he looked up. There was a tree. And then the next thing you know, his girlfriend's walking out, and she's talking on her phone, and she just screams and drops her phone, and he looks, and this black sludge thing wasn't huge. It was just kind of like, you know, he told me he did it like this, kind of like that. I don't know how big that is. And he said it just kind of slipped off of the top of his vehicle and went down into the drain. There was a drain, like a storm drain, where it would be, you know, like, hey, you like balloons? That guy, it, the clown. I'm not saying it was it. I'm just saying that there was black goo and it went off the top and then went down. You know? And then my dog's foot got stung by a bee. Has anybody been keeping up with this circus that is the Johnny Depp trial with Amber Heard? I hate to tell you this, but Amber Heard grew up like 15 miles from me. Like, please don't judge us by her, okay? Please don't. Please, Johnny. I'm going to say something here. This is going to sound like I'm bragging or something, but I actually know a couple people who Johnny Depp has worked with. I've actually met these people. Austin has a big studio that there's a lot of, and I've worked with people, and you know, and I was in the bodyguard game for a while. I had people that, you know, he's known as a very nice guy. Hey Anthony, is there a mouse pad? He's known as a very nice guy. A couple people that I worked with that I you know told me he was an incredibly nice guy. One guy in particular that I don't want to say, he may not want people telling me that he knows me and all this weird stuff we talk about. But he told me that, you know, he told me like several people in Hollywood, like who's cool and who's not. And Johnny Depp was one of the coolest people ever. So I don't know what she's thinking she's doing. She's going to sue him for $150 million. Like, you just thought that number up out of your, like, in your mind? It just disappeared?
I got five.
Wow. because this thing is like, it's all right. Just if you can find it. Yeah, and I mean, it's like, oh, you gonna take a poop in someone's bed? Like, come on. Of all the relationships I've had that I've just wanted to do something really gnarly, that has never come into my mind. Never to defecate or urinate in the bed. That has not ever been something that I thought, you know what? I'm gonna get this. This is gonna happen. You know? Like, what was the thought process on that? And it's like, you want to ignore me? You want to ignore me? Okay. You want to ignore me and go play Pirates of the Caribbean? Fine. Watch what I do. I can only imagine what was going through this person's mind. I can't even, what he was going through his mind. And then the poor maid that had to see it. I can't even, I'm just waiting for the chat to fill up, guys, so we can get on with the show here. But I'm just, I try to stay out of the pop culture-y type stuff. I'm not really into watching all of that, but it just the whole Johnny Depp thing was just, it was too much. It was just too much. So he decided to drop his herd on my bed. I can only imagine. Jack Sparrow comes home. There's a turd on my bed. Oh my gosh. I can only... You gotta drink a lot of rum, dude, to be with somebody like that. Imagine, dude. Oh, man. And then it's so fake. She'll start to cry, and then it's like, what are you crying for? Just, I don't get it. I mean, there's reasons people have to cry. It just seems like hers are not valid. If it sounds like I'm choosing sides, and I guess I am, because I just, from what I've heard and seen, I've never heard enough. I just can't even imagine. I draw the line at defecation of someone's personal sleeping quarters. My dog's foot got stung by a bee. So that made you go and do something crazy? What? How do you justify all that? Another turd. Yeah, I agree. Lori Hendricks, I agree. That's very Titan. I just can't imagine, being that messed up, that twisted. I mean, Jason Momoa had nothing good to say about her either, It was just, it's crazy. Something really wrong with her. And then you're going to countersue. It's like I hit you and then I start crying. Because you hurt my hand. I was punching his face, and I looked down and my hand was bruised. Oh. He had a very sharp face that I was punching. And it hurts. I need $150 million. Yesterday. Oh, great. Somebody said when she said she grew up outside of Austin, Maynard. Yeah. Maynard is where Chief is from. If anybody knows, Loki and Chief. So Loki went to school there, but he didn't live in Maynard. Neither did Chief. Chief lived outside of Maynard, but that Chief's been on my show, and so was Loki. Those are my brothers from back in the day. They went to school there. And there's cryptid legends of that too. I can tell you about that. The Will Barger Bridge there is haunted by the Goatman. So maybe that's what happened. She was traumatized by the Goatman as a kid, and that turned her mean. She's like, I'm here to pay the world back for what the Goatman did to me. And then she's probably going to sue the Goatman for messing with her. Because the Goatman turned her mean. She was a nice, sweet, loving person until the Goatman showed its face. Now she wants $250 million from the Goatman. Wouldn't doubt it. And then all they can come up with is Johnny Depp does drugs. Johnny Depp does drugs. Don't you hate that when they have when the lawyers have no other defense, so they just keep beating the drum of something that's just, who cares? If you live with somebody like that, you would probably do them too. Thank you, Amy, for that donation. I would probably be out of my gourd if I had to deal with somebody like that. I mean, you defecate in my bed. What new shenanigan is going to happen? It would just be a nightmare. You would just be day in and day out living with somebody like that. And then when she's like, go ahead, Johnny, let's see what happens, who they believe, It's like, yeah, she scared the Goatman. Can you see that the Goatman was in therapy? The Goatman's in therapy right now. We haven't seen him in 20 years. I'll tell you why. He's in therapy, dude, because Amber scared him. He's missing. She took a poop in his bank under the bridge. It's pretty ridiculous, man. And folks, pray for Chief. His grandmother passed away on Mother's Day. So yeah, it's pretty sad. And he does run a jiu-jitsu school and a catch wrestling school, whatever. And he trained my nephews, my godson, for a while. And him and his brother Justin, who run the school, are grieving because their grandmother died on Mother's Day. So that's pretty sad. But it's not his fault or Loki's fault that Amber happened to be from Maynard. Okay, let's not hold it against them. Can't hold it against Canada for Bryan Adams. Okay, but we can hold it against them for their president. All right. But I blame his dad from Cuba. So anyway, moving on. We're gonna make a phone call here. We're gonna get started because I'm waiting for the chat to fill up, and once again the NWO came after me for, I don't know, I guess I was talking something they didn't like or something. So we'll see what happens. So let me get this party started here, guys. Let me do this.
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, I can not hear you. There's a lot of I don't know what's going on here.
How about now?
Sounds much better. I can hear you better. It's not real. Let me ask a question, folks. Can y'all hear him say something?
Hey, I'm here. What's up?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so you can hear him better.
Turn it up.
If you can't hear him.
How about now?
Sounds much better. I can hear you better. Yeah, try to say something now.
All right, how about now?
Okay.
Maybe just need to speak up a little bit.
Yeah, there we go. So, folks, if in case you don't know who this is, Josh Nanokio, he's from. Well, go ahead and tell him what you do, Josh.
So I run the channel What Lurks Beneath, and what that is, it is storytelling of the mysterious and supernatural. So it's all things cryptozoology, supernatural, anything to do with missing 411. It kind of covers that whole umbrella, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And your channel is huge. You have a humongous channel. Folks, when I went to the Bigfoot conference, not this weekend, but the weekend before, to support my friends Ken, Lyle, Nick, and everybody that was down there in Mineola, which is about 4.5 hour drive from Austin. It's a very beautiful drive. I listened to What Lurks Beneath all the way over there and all the way home. So that it was, and I barely scratched the surface of your show. It is so vast. You have so many. I mean, it's unreal. You and Steve Stockton are like giants at this podcast thing or the YouTube thing. I can only
I had
wish
no
I could
idea
do
how
it.
we managed that, but it just caught on, I think what's helped me is the storytelling aspects. So my dad's Italian, so he talks a lot with his hands, and he's a great actor, and so I just kind of picked up on it, and I started doing this, and people were like, hey, I dig your narration and I dig your storytelling, and so it kind of just, I just do my thing, I don't try, and I guess it just caught on. So, but yeah, Steve's channel is awesome. So what's funny about that? For those of you who don't know, he runs, I think the name's National Missing Persons, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been checking on his content for a while, but I never knew that it was actually him until just the other day. I checked out his Facebook page and I saw that he was talking about one of the videos, and he mentioned something about, this one was a creepy one to do or something like that. And I checked out his description and it actually says narrated by Steve Stockton. So I'm like, what? And I messaged him. I'm like, this is you? He's like, yeah, this has been my channel. And it like blew my mind because I've known his channel for quite a while. Like I watch his stuff. I'll even use it to take notes on stuff because he'll cover cases, and I'm like, oh, that's such a genius angle to have on it. So it really goes to show you that this whole community it's a pretty small world, man.
Yeah. And me and you, now, here's the funny thing. First time I ever talked to Steve, we ended up talking for like 3 or 4 hours. It just happened. And then when me and you, we messaged back and forth, we finally got and started talking. You were on a layover in Dallas or something. Which is only, it's only like 3 hours away from me, and we ended up talking for like 3 or 4 hours, and then you were like, dude, because you looked at the time and you were like, I got to get up in like 2 hours and catch a. And it was
like teenage girls.
Yeah, we were just talking. I mean, it was like we just talked and talked and talked. That's how it was with me and Barton and me and Steve. And I've done that with everybody. I'm a talker, but you're a talker too, and I really enjoyed talking to you. We talked about all kinds of things, and what you have done with your channel is pretty epic. And Steve, just so everybody knows, Steve's is Missing Persons Mysteries.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have done a lot of good work.
It's awesome.
Do what?
Oh, thank you, man. I was telling everyone, like, yeah, if you guys haven't heard that one, you should check it out because his content is really good. Mm-hmm. Really good.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you, Steve, Tony Merkel, Jason Bland, y'all are like the top tier in the radio, like on the, you guys do a really good job. I mean, and I was blown away. I was listening to your and the way you narrate. I listened to the one about New Zealand. That one was really interesting. Yeah. The moa birds. Oh my gosh.
Well, and there's that creature, and I this is really interesting to me because every culture on the planet, or it seems like, from Africa to Tibet to, Europe, everybody has their own variation of a hairy wild man or a Bigfoot. And when you start looking at it, they all have different names, but the attributes are almost all similar. It's like this kind of hominid-like creature. They're sometimes cannibalistic. They're sometimes not. They're kind of like a tribal. They're not a monkey. It's almost like a tribe of people. They're very intelligent. A lot of times, from different stories, they seem to possess supernatural powers of a kind. So it's like, it's like, wow, there's so many similarities. And any of you out there, I don't know how many people are listening, but for anybody who is listening, who does research on this stuff, you'll see that there is a lot of similarities between these cases over and over. But that is a whole other rabbit hole that we can spend a lot of time getting into.
Yeah, one of the things that you talked about too was the feral humans. That was, or what is it? Was it Yellowstone? I can't remember which one it was. You had so many. I listened to probably 30 of them. But there was one you had that was about the national parks, the missing in the national parks. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you, was about the feral humans. That's one thing that me and Steve Stockton talked about. Now, when I say feral humans, I mean like possible Bigfoot human hybrids or something like that. I mean, have you heard of anything like that? Do you subscribe to that, or what do you think about that? That's something that me and Steve talked about last week.
Yeah, that's probably a sub niche that I don't know too much about, but I think it may have something to do with from my knowledge is the two sects of Bigfoot, how you have Bigfoot and then you have the Gugway, also known as face eaters, and I think that might have something to play in part. So for those of you that don't know, from what I've gathered from my research is that you have Bigfoot who are supposedly kind of the more docile, more calm, more I guess protective, they're more curious, and then you have I believe they're called Gugway. I think it's an Ojibwe word, and so I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
You're right.
But otherwise, they're just referred to as face eaters, and those are what are referred to as the baboon-looking Bigfoots. They're generally 10 to 12 feet tall, just massive hulking things. They're the ones that are incredibly violent and hostile. They will kill on contact. They are very nefarious. They will lure people in. I've heard that they are the ones responsible for when they find people's folded up clothes and they're gone. It's them that supposedly they'll mimic people's voices and lure them into bushes or whistle at them to get their attention, and they just eat them. And in fact, I had a gentleman who I was having a phone call with, and I'd have to reach back out to him where he got the story, but he recalled to me the story of a park ranger going along the river. I believe this was in Yosemite, if I recall correctly, either that or Yellowstone. And as he's coming around a bend in the river, he sees this young couple. They're probably in their 20s, just a couple of kids, out camping in this more remote camping spot. And they have their backs turned to the woods behind them, and they're facing this park ranger, and they kind of look up and they're waving to him. And out of the wood line behind them, he sees this creature come out, and it was, but by his description, it was a face eater. And this thing began to maul both of them, just rip them into bloody shreds. And the girl's freaking out. She's screaming, and this thing just tears her in two. I mean, it was just a bloody mess. And the ranger who's in this raft, he's probably about 50 or so feet away. He's screaming, but he couldn't get their attention in time. And there's nothing he can do as he sees this thing just ripping them apart. And as his boat sails by, he goes out of view. I think he eventually calls in a team to go check it out. And basically what happened is they covered the whole thing up, and they got rid of the bodies. They actually went in and they just basically got rid of that entire campsite. It ceased to exist. They planted a bunch of trees. They ripped out the roads they ripped out the gravel road that had led to that campsite. They planted trees, so it no longer existed. They cover the trails, and you wouldn't believe the amount of stories that I hear over and over that are so similar to that, and it's just my gosh. It's terrifying. Now, I know I kind of went off on a tangent here, but I think people really ought to know, hey, that, it's not always necessarily safe. You should definitely be carrying a firearm, 45 or a 357. When you're going out into the deep woods to the backcountry, you need to be prepared to, if you're going to encounter something that you can at least have a fighting chance. I don't know how much of these things or Dogman or whatnot is responsible for all these missing hunters and hikers. I mean, yeah, sure. When you look at it, there's definitely a percentage that, there's a logical explanation, somebody fell down a ravine, or, somebody just legitimately got eaten by a mountain lion, or they died of exposure. Of course, that's going to happen. But you just have so many people that go missing under bizarre circumstances. And I know Politis touches upon a lot of this stuff. But I know he's just scratching the surface, because there's just so many every single day all across. And it's not necessarily just in national parks, too. A lot of hunters go missing under mysterious circumstances. And these aren't rookies, right? These are guys who, they grew up with their mom, pop, hunting in the woods. They know the woods very well. They know how to track. They know what to listen for. They know when a predator's around. These are educated, experienced men. And to have these kind of people just disappearing without a trace, it's just... if you had a couple cases here and there, I would say, all right, that makes sense. But to have as many as you do, and then the fishy part is that it's quickly covered up, and no one wants to talk about it. And there's just stuff going on, man. And it's sometimes I realize I have to be careful with the questions I ask and the information I do share, because I'm there have been people that have made themselves targets before. And so... while I do find it interesting, I don't have anything concrete that I could be oh, well, this is the exact cause. I can just kind of speculate based on the knowledge that I have, kind of like what you have, we know things are going on. It's just a matter of who, what, when, where, and how,
Well, one of the things that you touched on Pilatus's work, Pilatus is very careful not to ever really give any real explanation. That's what he does.
Right.
Other than, I guess, the Hoopa Project. But, I mean, I've read 3 of his books, and it's always just kind of the same, kind of open-ended, whatever. Whereas you and Steve, you kind of like actually go in there and kind of, I think you guys go deeper and get more, into the meat and potatoes, and you're not afraid to come out and say, hey, this is what I think is happening. And I applaud you for that. That's one of the things that I respect you guys for. And one of the things too, before we go any further, Liberty, thank you for that donation, and thank you, Diana, for the donations. There is a creepy story of Brian McCleary and the Pensacola sea monster incident, 1962. This story is so underrated, and I believe it. I covered that, I believe, on my show with Scott Martis, the late Scott Martis. But anyways, what you do on your show is pretty amazing, and the way you retell the stories, I mean, it's very good. Like, you do a very good job. And folks, he's got a lot of content, man. Go out there and listen to Josh when Paranormal Round Table is only out twice a week. So in between all that, you can check out him and Steve. They're both very good at what they do, and they're going to be at the conference. You're going to be there, right, Josh, in Tennessee on August? Sir. Josh Nanokia is going to be there, folks, live and in person. You can meet him. He's going to be at the conference. Now, Josh, one of the things I was going to ask you about, and this is, because you were touching on the Gugwe, you had said that, and I want to make sure this is okay, that you had said that there will be a free flow of information between you and I. And I wanted everybody to understand what that means. Josh has a database of a huge amount of stories. And so I get stories, he gets stories, we get a lot of them, and working together, you and I and some of the other people that we've teamed up with, it's going to be really big for the field. I mean, I think that, like, when you were talking about, earlier today, we were talking about Albert Rosales. I just talked to him a couple days ago. Albert, somebody who's done so much work in this field, and like, he has volume after volume after volume of humanoid encounters. And I think he's broken them up into like decades. And so, like, I'm trying to put together, we're going to do a set together, me and Albert, and I'm telling him, I'm like, how in the heck am I going to do this? Because, when bringing somebody like you or Steve or Albert to talk about your work is so encompassing, because you have so much of it. It's like, I don't even know. It's like I was saying, it's like that cheeseburger. You don't know where to take the bite from. Because it's like, where do you start? I mean, it's like, I can't even, like when I was talking to Tony Merkel, I talked to him on Sunday, on Mother's Day. He called me, and Tony, and we kind of know exactly what we're gonna do. He's gonna talk about something that happened to him, a couple other things, and it was real simple. And Tony's got a lot of good stuff too. But I mean, like, we figured it out, But like with you, I'm like, I don't even know where to go. I don't know where to begin. Like, I don't know how to put this together, because we're going to have to figure it out, kind of go with the topic, see where it takes us, and maybe hope that we can, kind of we're going to have to flesh it out and figure out what we're going to do, because it's just, you got so much, and I'm just blown away by your work. I mean, it is unbelievable. And how many subs do you have, like, on your show? Like 100?
Well, first and foremost, I appreciate all that. Thank you, man. I really do. Right now, it's sitting at 167.
Golly. That's
and
crazy.
I'm pushing it, man. I'm trying to do the whole Mr. Beast thing, of the crypto world, where I'm just like, I try to be very hyper aware and analytical of the analytics. I'm looking for audience retention, like what topics work really well, and basically just feeding people, like, the same thing that I love. These are the topics that I ooze over and that I can't get enough of. And so, fortunately for me, I've been very lucky that I get to work with some really amazing people who help me research these topics, and just are able to find out amazing stories. Like I mentioned to you guys, or I mentioned to you, Josh Cutchin. He's written a couple books. He does some other things in the paranormal community, but he helps research a lot of things, and he has connections with Albert Rosales, and so he's able to use a lot of those the humanoid encounters. And in fact, just about a month ago, we did a 4-part series on Ukraine with all the humanoid encounters that had happened with them, especially surrounding the fall of the USSR, which is really interesting. That there was a massive spike of not just abductions, but bizarre, just strange encounters and things like that. And we're not talking like, Greys abducting you and torturing you. We're talking like Lemurians. I hope I'm saying that right. Like blonde-haired people. There was one in particular where Josh titled the story "I Come in Peace," and it's literally like this Russian guy and his wife, or excuse me, this Ukrainian man and his wife, and he sees his wall start to like evaporate or ripple, and he goes to touch it, and out of nowhere, these very handsome, beautiful beings like come out of nowhere, and they ask him if he's able to do this procedure, and I can't remember the exact wording verbatim, but they put a syringe into him and they extract seed out of him and they implant it into the females, and just crazy stuff that it's like, what? But it's not really terrifying. It's just like sci-fi kind of stuff. And there's a lot of these same kind of experiences, right? No real cryptids like seeing a Yeti or, like a demonic looking thing. It's just this kind of sci-fi stuff. And like I said, Ukraine is full of it. And unfortunately, with the world events going on, people were not too receptive of those stories, which, I get that. But when you just look at the research, I mean, it's just, wow. There's no stone unturned in the world where strange things are not happening. I mean, I had no idea those things were even happening over in that region of the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know this, but like a few weeks ago, I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook, and somebody had made a comment about Bigfoot in Ukraine and Russia and how they're hoping that the war will bring light to them. And I'm going like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, the war is... So I kind of made some jokes about that, but I was just like kind of blown away by that. But when something happens, like when there is war, there is always some sort of paranormal presence that happens. I think of like the Foo Fighters, the Gremlins of World War II, the Germans, the Japanese, the British, the Australians, the Americans. They all had the same stories of these gremlins that would mess with their planes, and they seemed to be kind of indifferent. Like they didn't really pick a side. They just kind of caused a lot of problems. And on both sides, there were documented cases of them shooting at what they thought were enemy craft that had some sort of an advanced technology, but it was incorrect. They were just UFOs. And I think that happens in war, that a lot of times, things come to light, and it is weird how there was an uptick in paranormal activity going on in the Ukraine and in Russia. Prior to and during this war, there's been a lot of weird stuff that's happened. I had somebody tell me the other day that they, because there's a lot of footage that's coming out of the war in real time, like people using GoPros, and people were saying that they were looking at what they thought was some sort of the demon. It was online for a little while, and then everybody's computer went out, and one of my friends his son was telling us about it, and I was like, a lot of weird stuff happening. And then me and you talked about this too, Josh, about recently, kind of jumping around here, but all the dog attacks.
Yeah.
I mean, like how there's so many people being attacked. Like, when did this start? I mean, me and Barton were talking about this a few nights ago, and just kind of going over some cases, and it was just like, dude, when did this like become a thing? Like the dog attacks and all this uptick and all of the UFO activity seems like it's everywhere now. Everybody, where the conference is being held. The guy that is renting out the conference space to us, he has seen UFOs like 3 different times right there in Tennessee. Where he lives, yeah. And it was just like everybody you talk to has seen them. I hadn't seen any UFOs until like the last 3 years. I've seen 3. I mean, it was always the same thing, like a little BB looking thing in the sky, and then it just vanishes. But I've seen it 3 times, and it's so weird when you start to look at like the uptick in this phenomenon, this what do you call it, like the paranormal presence seems like it's very strong, and it's getting stronger. Do you have any
Yes,
theories on that,
I agree.
Josh? I mean, because you're getting tons of stories all the time.
You know, it's interesting you touch upon that. First off, let me just say, like, I will say this, that the difference in not just climate, but the way in which our forest looks. So, like, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the way the Pacific Northwest looks, but, right, it's very coniferous, a lot of pine, a lot of fir, very open, you know, a lot of moss. But then you go to somewhere like Tennessee, you know, and it's like, it's like a jungle, right? Just thick, dense woods. It blew me away. And I'm like, man, it's no wonder that people have so many Dogman, Bigfoot things going on around this area. And it seems like there's more of a population of these encounters and things going on during, I want to say during the fall and spring, but especially like in the southern regions, it seems to be a big thing. And it makes me think there might be a migration of some sort. I mean, like, it's just a wild theory, and I have really nothing to back that up on, but it just makes me wonder, because there seems to be a lot of things that people talk about in the fall and people talk about in the spring. It's just an interesting note. Now, to kind of go on what you were saying, where, you know, do I think there's an uptick? I think, you know, there's a couple reasons for that. Number one is that with the internet and people, you know, seeing that there's more comfortable spaces to actually tell people about their encounters without feeling like a lunatic, that you're going to get a lot of stories from people who it just happened to, hey, I had this encounter back in 72. I can finally tell somebody this, right? So that plays a part. But I also do believe that, yeah, that there is more sightings more than ever. I've heard from theories from people. So, you know, I've got emails from people who are in the dark arts and who practice like occult black magic. You know, they talk about they've opened portals and, you know, things like that. I don't know how much of that, you know, I can actually use as sustainable evidence that's concrete. But it's interesting where I've heard that more than once. That, you know, they'll do these rituals and open portals for these things to come through. I don't practice black art, so I don't know about that. But I've also heard that apparently, like in 2012, something changed. I don't know what that means, but I've just heard that used. I don't know if that's in reference to the whole Mandela thing, but I've heard that's a hoax too. So I don't know. Those are things I haven't dived too deep into on my own to really like know for sure, but they're just really interesting rabbit holes that I've kind of just stuck my foot a little bit in, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to explore that for another time. But I think it really goes back to, like, yeah, you're having a lot more people coming forward with their encounters, but also, yeah, experiencing more. I think I feel silly for saying it, but I do feel in a way the veil is thinning more and more, and more people are having. And it's not just Bigfoot, you know what I mean? Like strange, like for example, like the Fresno night crawlers, right? Gray aliens, people being abducted, seeing all sorts of bizarre creatures. I've had accounts from people seeing these bipedal, hairy, horned cryptids, right? Like nobody talks about that, right? Or you know, the whole goat man, you know, people seeing kind of more hybrid looking creatures. It's not always just a Dogman or a Bigfoot. Of course, you have the go. Excuse me, everybody. By the way, I have a cold and I'm still getting over it, so bear with me on that one.
Anybody that doesn't know, this is Josh Nanokio from What Lurks Beneath. He's a major player in the YouTube game. He's a huge. If you haven't checked out his work, you're missing out. He's a huge presence on YouTube in the paranormal. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry, but people were asking who you were.
Thank you for the flattery, Josh. I appreciate that.
Well, it's sincere because if you entertain me for 9 hours, I don't listen to shows. I've said that many times. Right. I don't have time, but I had time on that trip, and you know, I'm not knocking my wife's music, but I don't really want to hear it. So I was like, hey, you know what? Let's listen to Josh. You know what? I can do some research. Here we go. He's coming on the show. I got to listen. And so that was my excuse. So I listened to it all the way up there and all the way back. And I was good, man. I wasn't even tired. I wasn't falling asleep or anything, you know. And you kept me on the edge of my seat. You do a very, very good job. I don't give compliments just to flatter people. I think you do a good job. I call it like I see it. But well,
the way I like to see it is, you know, people really need a place where they can tell their encounters and they could tell their experiences, and so. I'm not just doing storytelling for people. I mean, like, you know, telling people stories, but I'm kind of like a modern day Twilight Zone for anybody who doesn't know what I do. So think of me as like an Unsolved Mysteries, Twilight Zone, you know, that kind of that's why I said, like, storytelling of the mysterious and the supernatural. I know true crime is really big. Everybody talks about gory true crime cases, and that's cool and all, but like there's this huge just hole for like the paranormal community. I'm like, who's the guy telling these people? Like, these people, like, they need to be heard. And like, I get it. There's a lot of like creepypasta and horror channels that do the whole narration thing, and that's cool. But I feel like it's kind of got like this. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but it's just people have this this thing where they go into a channel and it's like automatically they're like, they hear a story like that, they're like, it's creepypasta, right? But I feel like if people get to genuinely hear someone's encounter, it might make them a little more open-minded, especially like when they have a visual reference and they see that there's not just one but several, that people can kind of corroborate details and really, give their information. And I've gotten some pretty disturbing cases. In fact, I got one today. I just shot it earlier that blew my mind. I don't know if these guys want to hear it at some point, or if I could like send it to you or what. But I'll give you the base of what happens. And so this occurred back to this guy named Anders back in 1992, and he was dating this girl at the time, Pamela, and Pamela decided, like, she was kind of going through this hippie phase, and so I guess her and Anders were like good friends in high school. They reconnected in 1992. This is when he was saying she kind of went through this hippie phase, and so she befriended this dealer, and she, at the time she was doing like LSD and mushrooms and stuff, and so at the time she's like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't me, you, and my dealer, like, why don't we all go up and like camping in the Wasatch Mountains in Utah? And he was like, yeah, like that sounds great. And so she brought along her friend Simon and his sister. And so, of course, they all get in the car, they drive out there, and they're in the Uinta Mountains, right? So, like, at the time in 92, it's, like, desolate. There's not another soul around. It is pretty much, like, now it's, like, really touristy and really yuppie, but at the time, it's, like, there's just nothing. And so they go out there, that they take the shrooms and like they're having a good time. And then I guess the dealer guy starts saying some like really obscene things to Simon because he assumes he's gay. And so he's just calling him all these names. And, Simon, he's like this really quiet, introverted guy. And at one point or another, he gets up and kind of just leaves camp. And, everyone at this point, they had took the shrooms, so they're kind of tripping. And after a while, everyone's like, hey, where's Simon? And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we should go look for him. And so the dealer, I never got the guy's name. They just referred to him as the dealer in the story. The dealer guy and Anders decided to go look for him, and they're calling his name, Simon, Simon. But, they don't know where he's at. And they're also right by a lake, too. And so they're looking around, and Anders begins to hear this strange electromechanical sound that sounded like this big drill or something, but like through a large steel speaker or something. And at this point, they're a long ways away from civilization, and so it really freaked him out. So he had several occurrences that day, like looking for Simon, where he would just get these strange sensations in his gut feeling, like things weren't right, and that he would hear this siren again. But when he met back up with the dealer guy, because at one point they would split on the trail. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of jumping around in details here. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. So he meets back up with the dealer guy, and the guy's like, yeah, I didn't hear the siren, which he thought was weird. Now, eventually, on their way to look for him, the dealer guy gets really freaked out and starts kind of like muttering, and they don't know if he's like tripping out or what, but he's just kind of crazy off his rocker, saying like, oh, they got him, they have him. And Anders is like, what do you mean they have? Like, what are you talking about? And they keep looking, and they eventually find Simon. Now, here's where it gets crazy, guys. So they find Simon, and he's on his knees, sitting right by the lake, the bed of the lake, and his arms and hands are by his side, and he's lifted up, staring up at the sky with his eyes closed and his mouth wide open. And he is covered in this ultra-fine gray-white dust, right? And Anders was like, it looked like he was covered in cement, right? Like, if you get those, like those 50-pound bags of cement from like Home Depot, right? It's like if you took that, cut it open, and just covered yourself. Ultra-fine, dust-like, but there was nothing around him. It was only him that was covered in it, and he wasn't moving. And so Anders is freaking out. He's like, go get Simon's sister now. Like, we don't know what's going on. He's not breathing. And so he's trying to pick him up. They're trying to move him. Pamela and Simon's sister, they come running. And, of course, they're hysterical. They're crying. They're freaking out. What did you do to my brother? So it's just a mess. So they get Simon finally. They're actually able to pick him up, take him back to camp. and he's completely unresponsive. He's falling over on the bench. They don't know what to do. And at the time, when they first came up here, it was bright and sunny. It was beautiful. And now it had turned into this ugly, nasty storm. And in the mountains, weather can change pretty instantaneously. But there was something that Anders said that it seemed different. Like there was just something about it. And so, long story short, they get back in the Jeep, and as they're driving back to the small town, I think it was, gosh, I can't remember the name of the town, but it's like a one-horse town, right? There's not even a police department at the time. And so, they're calling for an ambulance, and it took the ambulance like an hour to even get to their vehicle. And eventually, when the ambulance came, Simon was pronounced dead on the scene. When they had pulled him out of the car, he was not covered in that dust or whatever that was on him. In fact, when Anders, the dealer guy, Simon's sister, and Pamela all carried him back to camp, they somehow did not get any of this dust stuff on them. The police also weren't sure what to make of it because everybody apparently had a different story. So, for example, Simon's sister, apparently the dealer guy never made fun of Simon, and he just got up and left. And apparently, like, these two native guys came through camp, and, which is also really weird because at this point, the closest reservation is like 150 miles to the north, and mainly, mainly occupied by the Arapaho and Shoshone. Just strange stuff, man. I'm only telling you guys like a portion of the story and not all the details, but just strange stuff, right? And so police couldn't really make out the story because everybody had a different thing. And so, for example, like Anders was the only Anders, Simon's sister, and Pamela were the only ones that had heard that siren, whatever that was, but the dealer guy never heard it. And so, long story short, Pamela ends up getting arrested for Class A distribution of substances, but she doesn't serve time. And they were never really able to figure out the who, what, when, where, and how, and basically Simon died. So that was a pretty extreme story. I don't really get stories like that too often, but it's like, wow. But his whole thing was like, he's like, man, I have no idea what we experienced out there. I don't know how to explain it. Now, what's interesting, too, is Pamela had mentioned that she had saw a tall man in black motioning to her to follow him, who was walking around the front of the lake. So, people could say, they were on mushrooms. Listen, guys, I've done mushrooms twice in my life. I was much younger, but I will tell you now that you do not experience the things that they did. Like, you'll have you'll have visual hallucinations, but it's more just distortions of shapes and colors. You're not going to see like people that aren't there. And to the degree like what he was describing to me, I'm like, that you don't have that strong of hallucination. So I don't know. All I got to say is it's just like, wow, holy crap. And so I shared it with a few people on my Discord. And so no one's really sure what to make of it. It's kind of like one of those stories that it's like, gosh. So anyway, that's going to be coming out here. And I don't know, probably like within the week or next week. And anyway, it goes to show you that like literally no matter what state, there's just so much stuff, Josh. There's so much stuff. In fact, the other day I also did one on Crater Lake. And Crater Lake, if you guys don't know, oh my gosh, that one, man. That have you ever heard of the I think it's called the Old Man. There's a name to it, but it's supposedly this tree that is somehow it moves around in the lake. It's just there's a lot of really trippy UFO, paranormal, low vibration energy kind of stuff going on in all these hot spots. I don't know what it is. Then a lot of the natives know. They all give warnings to people. Don't go there, don't go there. And it makes me sad that a lot of people are quick to blow them off as superstitious people because these people, like they live and died in that environment. Like they know it really well. And I was like, if there's anybody's encounters I would trust, it was definitely them. They have nothing to gain from it. So, yeah, man, just like I said, just crazy stuff going all over the national parks. I feel bad because I don't remember your original question.
No, it's what we were talking about, though, because it's just kind of how it goes. Our conversation just builds organically. But one of the things that you touched on about opening portals and things like that, now that was something that Crowley and Jack Parsons, about that. I don't know if you know about that. Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, and of course Hubbard, they supposedly were doing all this magic. Yep. And they even took credit. Of course, Crowley, he summoned Delima, and they took credit for opening portals, and they claimed that they were responsible for the uptick in UFO activity and all this other stuff. And I don't know if that's exactly correct. If they did something that they created a bigger opening or something. I know that when you go back and you look at like, okay, Mount Shasta keeps coming up here, the Lemurians. Okay, let's go back to what you were saying about that. About Mount Shasta. Okay, the Lemurians. Now, they're supposedly a race of aliens that came here. Now, there's different versions. Some people say that they're interdimensional. Some people say that they're extraterrestrial. Some people say that they're ultra-terrestrial. I have a really different view of reality and the way I look at reality than most people. And if I tell you, I mean, you know, folks at home, you might think I'm crazy, but I've said it before on my show, and I'll just say it again. I mean, like, I have literally been out of my body multiple times. And so whenever you look at, when you go into an altered state of consciousness, which is what things like shrooms and other things like peyote and you know, Amanita muscaria, DMT, whatever you want to call it, all that stuff does that. You go into different smaller versions of that. I mean, but it's very short term, and it's only little pieces of it. You're like getting like a piece of the puzzle, but you're not really seeing it correctly. And then there's different parts of reality where you can go where it's kind of like dream walking. I don't know. I just watched Doctor Strange the other night, and when they kept saying dream walking, I thought that makes sense, because that's kind of what you do. You're in an astral plane, but you got to be careful, because which plane are you in? Which dimension are you in? And that's where the confusion comes from. You are in an altered state of consciousness, and you're seeing a different plane of existence, but are you in fourth density, fifth density? Where are you at? So what I think happens is, like with the Lemurians, whatever they are, wherever they came from, whatever, I believe they existed. And there were people that claimed that they would come to town and that they looked like these really tall beings. And I mean, how would you describe them, Josh? Like Nordic looking? Tall?
Yep. Very tall. Very well built, not necessarily like ripped and buff, but just very tall, very well built. Long hair, blonde hair, I believe, or dark hair. Very, like, for the males, very handsome, very sharp, broad features. You know, the perfect chin, the chisel. For women, very sharp, beautiful features. I mean, they have the aesthetic thing down, basically. But that's kind of their general, you know, appearance.
Yeah, and a lot of people claim that there is an entire world underneath our feet, with a world within a world. And I know that Austin itself, where I live, is built on top of like basically a cave system. We have like literally like an entire, where the town hall used to be, I did security there. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this. Actually, it was Barton, because me and Barton talk all the time. But we were talking, and I told him this story. I was like, it's not, I don't think I've ever told it on the show. It's not real in depth or anything. But there's like an entire, like, 2 city blocks that are underneath the ground. And like, it used to be under the Hancock Center in Austin, and it was like the Sears. And if you walk down in there, one of my security posts that I did for about 4 days, and I said, I don't want to do this. But it was on a patrol that I had to do, and I only did the patrol sometimes. And even to this day, I don't like to do the patrol, like standing guard. But I had to do a hit there, and I went down into the tunnel to take you down. You know, it's there's like a walkway, and you end up in like this underground city. And I heard somebody say wolf, and I was like, and I turned and I looked, and I thought it was a person. So I thought maybe it was one of my peers or somebody that worked there so I started walking around, and there's literally like buildings and stuff underneath the ground. It's really weird. I mean, and then there used to be a place called Logan's on 6th Street, and when you go toward the back where the cooler was, my friend used to work there, and he was closing up one night. Me and my brother and my friend Squid were on there having a drink, and he says, you want to see something cool? And he took us there, and he pulled this wooden door open, and this breeze hits you immediately, and it's underground. Like, there's this whole cavern. We went about 20 feet in, and I was like, I'm good. And I walked back, because you get all these weird stories from downtown about these little, as we call them in Spanish, monitos or duendes, these little creatures. And people have given me stories, you know, personally given me stories of these little creatures. You know, they run around. And so I'm like, I'm not interested in going into the underworld. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's there, and I believe it exists, and I think that the Lemurians came from, they were literally living inside of Mount Shasta. And I think that they eventually just went further deeper into the, Earth. It's kind of like on Lord of the Rings, the dwarves. They lived inside of caves. And I believe that could very well be what we're dealing with. And there's an entire world. Think of Admiral Byrd. I mean, there's an entire world under there. And I believe that some of these weird creatures that come up, they're species from, they're denizens of the inner Earth. That's what they are. And I think that's where they belong. And I think that you need to be real careful, not you, me, but I mean, like, just people in general. When you see something that's strange or it's out of place, like I was talking about earlier, this guy went out and right there on his Toyota Tacoma, there was a black blob of goo that seemed to have an intelligence about it, because it like moved off of his truck and then slinked away and went into a storm drain. Him and his girlfriend were both just sitting there with their mouths open, like, what the heck? I mean, it happened quickly, but it was, and it was creepy. But things like that happen all the time. People, like a lady just sent me a story, this, shadow being, like just like a set of really skinny, long, elongated arms came out and was trying to grab her daughter by her hair. And her daughter woke up saying she was having a bad dream. And then the next day she saw that when her daughter screamed. And so there was literally some sort of shadow looking thing that was clutching at her daughter's hair. This happened in Boston. But you get these weird stories like all the time. If you're like you and I, we get these stories constantly, and it's mind blowing. And so I really believe there is an uptick. And I was in a Brazilian restaurant last night. I took my brother for his birthday. And folks, if you ever come to Austin, it should be a destination. It's the best Brazilian churrascaria ever. It's Estancia. It's really good. I know the owners and the managers are really good people. So we went there to eat last night, and the guy that's from Brazil, the manager, one of them, the general manager, he was telling us, some stuff about Brazil, and there's just a lot of weird, creepy stuff there. And there seems to be an uptick in possession that goes on. It's been going on down there. I mean, I covered one called The Brazilian Exorcist that happened a while back. But since I did that story, I got several more that were just people, not big, real long stories or anything, but people saying, yeah, I've heard of this person being possessed. My aunt was possessed, and it's all in Brazil and Paraguay and all these different South American countries. And I think that something is going on. I don't know exactly what, and I have my own theories about it, but I believe that we're being inundated with this information. And I think something's happening. And I think that, guys like you and I, and our colleagues, a lot of the people that are going to be at that conference, I mean, we're at the forefront of this. And I think that the rest of the world is going to have to stand up at some point and say, this is not para anything. This is just normal. It's going to become normal because this is reality. The people, I tell people all the time, I said, your reality will eventually catch up with mine, and you're going to see the world for what it is. It's not this straight edge normal, just because you don't see something every day. And I told this one lady, Josh, I said, do you see lions? She goes, what do you mean? I was like, do you see lions running around the street? She goes, no. I said, but they exist, right? She goes, yeah, well, not around here. I was like, well, people see them. They do run around. They get loose from, exotic farms, and they run around. I was like, you could be walking through a parking garage and see a lion. That really happened to a guy in Killeen, Texas. Like, he told me, he goes, I was doing a security job, and he was actually on the military base. He belonged to the Army, whatever, at that time. And it turned out that somebody had a lion that had escaped. And this thing just ran through the parking garage. And he was like, people were like calling him, hey, there's a lion, So I told her, I said, dude, just because you don't see it every day doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because we don't go outside of our house and see, lions running around doesn't mean that they're not there, that they don't exist, that it doesn't happen. That's how I see the paranormal. It's like, it may not be in your face every day, but at some point you're going to be in contact with it, or you're going to be in contact with somebody who's had something to do with it. It's just and people want to push it out and say, oh, it's weird and it's not real or whatever, but it is real. It's very real, and it does exist, and it is it's very tangible when you stop and you really just start to think about it. You know, it's like everybody claims, oh, nothing's happened to me, but then, you know, they think about it for a few minutes, and then next thing you know, they have half a dozen different things that have happened to them. Well, there was just one time, and then there was this other time, and next thing you know, they have an entire show, you know, ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean, but that happens all the time. And I think that like the thing with the Lemurians, I honestly believe that they were from a previous civilization that had lived above ground for a while and decided it wasn't for them. I think that they were part of a past cycle. And I think that the world goes in cycles, and we catch glimpses at times, and some people it becomes even more of a reality to them because they deal with it on a daily basis, and then it becomes like a nuisance even, you know. And it's sad when people don't believe them because they just want to be heard, you know. And then there are people who don't really care whether people hear them or not. They just say, this is my reality, this is the truth, you know. And I hate when people mock those that have dealt with these things because
It's all the time.
Yeah, it's not happened to them, so they think it's cute or funny to mock and make fun. But like if you go to your show, like the park rangers, like some of those people that have to deal with those things that go on, it's a daily reality to them, you know. And then they're not really, you know, at liberty to just speak about it to anybody. They have to be careful what they say because you don't want to scare people and make them not visit the park. But you also, by the same token, you know that there's something going on out there. You know that there's these creatures out there, like you were talking about the gugwe, the face eater, you know, what it essentially is. And tell me if you think this is the same, if I'm saying it correctly, you know, what I have been told and what I have researched and what the reports I've gotten that I've classified is that it's a Dogman looking Bigfoot. That's the best way I can describe it.
You know, so I was reading some of the comments, and you had a few people who were kind of giving more information on it. Mm-hmm. And see, I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to face eaters and gugwe, right? But yeah, it seems that they're kind of the baboon looking ones. But then I've heard that there's, you know, like you said, the multiple type of Dogman, where I think it's like type 3 supposedly is like it's like half Bigfoot, half Dogman. But I do wonder if there are variations that are kind of like more of a hybrid between a Dogman and a Bigfoot. Because I know people have described seeing these creatures. I just don't know, you know, is that a gugwe? Is that just a type of Bigfoot? Like, I don't know. So basically I can say that, like, yes, they exist, but like, how would we classify them? You know, your guess is as good as mine, you know?
Would you, I mean, like, in your opinion, and this is going to, but do you think that there could have been like some genetic tampering that went on? I mean, even like in modern times, I'm not talking about ancient cycles from the Anunnaki. I mean, like, do you think that maybe somebody took one of these and said, hey, let's mix it with one of these and see what we get? Like Dulce?
Honestly, yeah, I would say, like, honestly, that my belief, and just like based on my research and what I know, I think there's been DNA manipulation from, I mean, the dawn of time. And I say the dawn of time because it hasn't stopped. You know, like, for example, in the Bible, in this, right? So I don't know how many are you familiar with Genesis, but obviously there's Adam and Eve, and then there's Cain and Abel. Well, Cain kills Abel, at least I believe I had that right. And, you know, Cain has that mark that gets put on him, so that way others will not know to murder him. Well, wait a minute. If we only went from Adam and Eve to Cain and Abel, what do you mean others? Who else is there that has to be marked? Yeah, so, and that's the thing is people will be like, yeah, but, well, here's the thing. Like the Bible, and specifically Genesis, isn't designed to tell you about pre-flood. It's designed to tell you the basically the start of sin, and of course, you know, mankind to Noah, et cetera, and then, you know, the falling away of Israel. So it has nothing to do at all with the pre-flood times. But if you look at all like the Mesopotamian history and all these, like, just all the ancient texts, there is discussion after discussion and mention of beings from the sky. And you know, these demigods who came down and taught mankind sorcery and astrology, and it's just like you have all this stuff. There was something going on pre-flood. There was something going on, and when I say something, I mean I'm talking advanced technology. I'm talking DNA manipulation. of course, people might hear me saying this and they think, you're absolutely off your rocker. But I encourage you, like go look at some of these ancient texts and go really take time to study this stuff. You'll start to see these topics popping up. And I'm mentioning this because I'm going to segue, Josh, here to modern day with DNA manipulation, right? So it almost seems like everything, if God's creation is man, it would make sense for Satan or Lucifer to distort that code. Right now, what is man's code? It's the DNA. It's the blood. So what's a way you can perverse and to basically say to screw you to God, right? It would be to change the DNA. Well, how'd you do that? By morphing it with other things, by intermixing it with animals, by splicing it, by perversing it in any way you can. Now, on a side note here, I think this is really interesting. There is a Peruvian city, and forgive me, all of you, I forget the name, but you can Google this, right? It's called the God of Morop. It's Morrop. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. Now, the God Morop, and there's an actual statue of it if you Google the statue of Morop. He is a humanoid reptilian being. He's terrifying looking. He looks like, I don't know if you guys ever played Turok, right? He is a reptilian dinosaur looking thing, and he's scary looking. And ancient Peruvians worshipped him and this other half-humanoid crab-like god, and apparently these people knew these people as iguana-like beings, and their whole thing was that these iguana people held the keys to the underworld, right? So how the heck do these people know about these things? So it goes to show you that there's something going on, right? So now we go to modern day. There's talk of were these things DNA created? Were these Nephilim? That is such a deep rabbit hole. I mean, you can go down.
We could go down for hours. I always tell people, Josh, if I can exist, they can exist.
Yeah, exactly. And so now I believe that the military and the government, and you look at things like, the Monarch, MK Ultra. If the CIA can pull that off in secrecy, then I don't see why the military couldn't, control or pull off heinous, disturbing acts of terror against humans and in the wake of technology, why they couldn't be doing DNA splicing and things like that. And they have the power to cover this stuff up. So it really is. So I'm trying to give you a very detailed answer. And to answer your question, yes, I think there's definitely DNA manipulation going on. To what extent, I don't know. But I would definitely say things are happening. What's also interesting is you have, for example, and this also kind of covers the, when people say, well, if Bigfoot's existed, why don't we have a body? Well, there's two reasons for that. Number one, Bigfoot, and there's stories to back this up, that Bigfoot bury their dead. They're not an ape. They're not Gigantopithecus. They are a people. They're very intelligent beings. They do bury their dead. There's multiple stories that talk about this. The second one is that anytime there's a body, what do you do with the body? Well, you'd want to bring it to public, right? Anytime it's even brought in public light, it's confiscated, usually by government or FBI, and people say, well, that's a load of hoo-ha. Really, except, again, if you spend the time researching, you'll find it. There's story after story about people who said, hey, I shot one, I killed one, I did this, I did that, and, the body was taken from me, I was threatened, I was told to never talk about it again. The guys who end up actually legitimately having body parts, they freeze them. They're like, oh, well, that's a hoax. That's fake. That doesn't exist, right? So it's either you're discredited when you have something real, or it's confiscated from you when it's actual, when you have something that's also real. So it's I think the point is that the public is not supposed to know about it. And there seems to be this huge disinformation campaign to really push against the acknowledgement of, I wouldn't just say cryptozoology in general. I would say more like supernatural, right? You're kind of silly if you believe in ghosts and the spirit world and anything that's beyond our realm of our matrix, that we all live in. Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with you. You have a problem. You shouldn't be questioning peon. It's one of those things. And so
exactly.
Yeah, it's
you're a troublemaker. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, there you go again, using your brain. Yeah, and honestly, we've seen that more in the past 2 years more than ever. And I'm not getting political here. I'm just saying, just with disinformation and just on both, and the whole fact-checking thing, and just, because anybody could be a fact-checker, and how do you discern what's true and what's not anymore, right? Because now there's information on both sides, and so it's become so hyper divided that we literally have two sects of beliefs of reality. It's not even political beliefs anymore. It's literally two different realities that people live in. And if you live in one, so it's just really, it's frightening where things are going. And you have to fit into a certain mental pattern to believe one thing, and a certain mental pattern to believe in another, and it's like, wow, it's a little frightening there.
Yeah, one of the things that you did a show that I listened to on the way back from Mineola and the conference about Dulce.
Oh yeah,
that was so weird, dude. And when you think about Dulce, like, okay, what if that is real, folks? I'm not even going to get into it. It's too long and too drawn out to get into it. Me and Josh will we'll record for the podcast and we'll talk about that. But that you just got to go back and listen to what Josh, and you went into you did a very good presentation on that. Like, I mean, you presented the facts, and you gave pretty much all the information out there, in a nutshell, but there are some details, like you get stories, like you made mention that there are people who get stories from that region all the time. Oh, yeah. And I believe that one of these stories that I had gotten that was close to that area was of a gargoyle looking creature. And when I started looking at the location, and I was looking at a map, and I thought, this is a little weird, because that creature is something that I later found out that had been supposedly seen by people who claim to have actually been to Dulce. Well, one person in particular, and I thought that was a little weird. I mean, you're hearing a report, and then people saying, well, there's this big base underground, and they have all these different levels, another thing I thought too, when it said there were 7 levels, because there are 7 levels of hell, there's 7 levels of heaven. I mean, and that's, and the number 7 comes up over and over again, and the Bible's a very powerful number, and it's very important. And like my life path number is a 7. 7 is spiritual. That's your job, is be a spiritual teacher. If you're a 7, and if you add up all your numbers, and then it breaks down to one number. Mine is 7. And I was also born 7/14/75, which is 7, and then there's 2 right there in 14, then 7/75. So there's a lot of 7s in my, and so the more 7s you have, supposedly, the more spiritually enlightened you are. And I'm not saying I'm not bragging or anything like that, folks. I'm just saying that is what there is a belief in numerology now. But because it has the word ology, at the end, the word has ology at the end of it, a lot of people automatically gonna be like, that's evil, that's satanic, and then they're just going to shut their mind off to it, because they are so close-minded to the truth, because when you're looking through things like this little bitty, it's all you're seeing. You're not getting the big picture. And I tell everybody, you got to step back and look at it. It is a mosaic picture that's just like a panoramic picture. It's not this, when you're right up against it, you can't see it. You can't make out heads or tails of what you're looking at, but you got to step back and look, and it seems like to me, like with you, you and several other people that I've gotten together with as of late and teamed up with, you guys are on the right level. You guys are seeing the world the way that I see the world. You're seeing it through the lens that you're supposed to be seeing it through. And we're putting all these pieces together. And that may make some to jump for joy and others to gnash their teeth. But if you're angry about that, stop and think about what side you're on, because you obviously don't want this information out there. There's got to be a reason why you don't want that information out there. And it's hard for me to fathom, but there are people literally working against us. I mean, literally, with the whole convention. I mean, there's people messing with people because they don't want them to go to this convention. They don't want that. I was like, what is wrong with you? That you would want people to hide the truth. I mean, that is the most ridiculous, because it doesn't jibe with what you believe reality should be. I'm not going to say your reality, whatever, because it's not even reality at all. It's what you want it to be.
Right.
And that's what they want. They want the reality to be a certain way. And when you twist it, and turn it upright and show it to them, they're like, oh, no, that's not my reality. I'm going to turn it back upside down so I feel better about my life. Well, sorry, but, you're not a part of what's real. You're living in this little offshoot of whatever you've created for yourself. And people do create their own reality. They really do. And then they feel cozy there, so they just snuggle in and say, well, this is what I'm going to accept, and everything else I'm just going to push out. And if you bring something in that I'm not comfortable with, well, then I'm just going to attack you vehemently because it makes me uncomfortable. And one thing I tell people all the time, the way to overcome a lot is to get outside of your comfort zone and to learn to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And that sounds really weird, okay? And it sounds like a bunch of baloney, but it's the truth. I've always preached that to my nephews, my godson, everybody that I raised them, and I always told them, I said, look, you're going to have to learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's the only way you're going to learn or grow, is if you come out of your comfort zone. And like, I get out here every week and I do this live. So if I screw up something or say something stupid or wrong, it's there. I mean, it's done. You said it live, and so everybody that's listening is going to hear you say it. So you have a set of, you have to have testicular fortitude to do this. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to come out there and say what you got to say, and it takes some, it's not for everybody. Not anybody can just go out there and stand out in front of somebody. Now, you said something funny the other day to me. You said people will go, "You're just a big fat guy with a beard." Like the voice you said, and I'm like, so am I, like me and Steve Stockton talked about that. It's like, but apparently, us fat guys with beards are the ones that are giving you the truth. So you might want to be a little nicer next time you see a fat guy with a beard. Maybe buy him a sandwich or a beer or something, because he's trying to help you, And I'm just saying,
like, it's 2022, man. Chicks dig big guys with beards. Like, it is in, buddy.
I always tell people, I said, look at all the bad people, okay? Like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, what's the other guy's name? John Wayne Gacy. No beards. No beards, guys, okay? I'm not saying, I'm just throwing that out there. A lot of serial killers didn't have beards. I'm just saying, I'm not saying you're a serial killer for not having a beard, but I'm making a loose connection there. But it's funny. Josh, can you do the voice? You did it a few times when we were talking. If you feel uncomfortable, do it. That's fine. I don't put you on the spot, but you do this sort of like when you say, "That's not," you do it, because I love the way you do that. Can you do that for the listeners? It's when you're talking, you're like, "That story's not yours," or how do you do it?
That story doesn't belong to you.
That one. So I'll get comments, and this only happens sometimes, and they're my favorite, right? There's this one girl, she's like, "How did I end up on the idiot side of YouTube?" I was like, "Oh, this is fantastic." Yeah. But or my favorite, right? Like, so. And this just comes with the territory. I don't know how anybody else out there feels about David Paulides, but for me, I just cover, missing person stories. I'm not trying to step on anyone's toes, but unfortunately, I get people who are saying, "That's Paulides' work," and I'm like,
that's the voice right there. That's Paulides. Like they become goblins, dude.
Yeah, I mean, that's just disrespect, but I'm like, dude, I got this information on Google. Like, this is public information. Like, I didn't do anything from his book or anything. Like, I don't even have any connection with the guy, but it's just, you'll get those. Or like, "Well, you missed this fact about this guy who didn't tie his shoes correctly, and he had a canteen full of piss on a Tuesday night. You need to do better research. You're a disgrace to the community." I'm like, really? Come on, bro. Come on.
The other night we were having that conversation. It was like, whenever you would talk, when you would read a negative comment to me, you would go into this sort of goblin witch voice. I thought it was hilarious. You're like talking normal, and you're like, "That's not what that said. I was like, dude. So I told my wife the other day. I said, every time now I read something negative, I get that voice that Josh. Because you put in my head, I'm reading a negative comment the other day, and they're like, "This guy talks ad nauseum. I'm sick of this." And I was reading it in the voice that you had, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," I got that voice in my head every time. So folks, just know, if you read something negative, I'm going to read it in a goblin witch voice in my head, courtesy of Josh Ninocchio. Thank you so much for giving me that and putting it in my head now, because now that's the voice I read, and it makes me just laugh at these people too, because it's like, whatever. Like, you need to do more research. Exactly. like they're doing research. They're reading. They're on the toilet, probably reading it. Like, "This guy's not correct. Before I wipe, let me type. Whatever, dude." And you know, and our lives revolve around your comments. That's why when I go back and look at this, I'm like, whoa, that's a negative comment from 6 months ago. I didn't delete it because I don't care. It's just there. Like you said the same thing. You're like, who cares? Let them rant, you know?
Well, right, and the thing is too, it's like with those kind of comments, like you're just gonna get them. It is what it is. People will try and they'll say things, but it's like, dude, I can only include so much in a 30-minute story. And you think like, yeah, how did this information get on Google? But it's like, you don't just look at one source, you look at multiple sources, right? Like when somebody goes missing, it's public information.
Absolutely.
Like you can look at corroborating accounts, which there's usually multiple on a missing person. So to say that Paulides is responsible, like it's his work you're stealing, I would agree with you if I was reading verbatim from his book and I was directly taking the details he got. Yes, I would agree with you. But when you can check multiple sources online that make it available, from the family members to Facebook pages to, like actual police reports. I mean, come on, guys, come on. I mean, like you can all pull from the same source. Like nobody owns missing persons reports. That's not how it works. You can't own somebody's. I think we talked about this. Mm-hmm. You can't own someone's case. Somebody
and I told you, Josh, this, and I'll say it on the air. If I die or I go missing, I don't want anybody exploiting that and going like, oh yeah, I'm the one that's going to write about it, because that's not going to happen. I don't want to end up in a 411 book. Okay, not allowed. Okay, and the thing is, I don't know David personally. Okay, and I'm not going to comment on David, but I think it's his people, like the people that they think that they're being supportive of him or something. So like if you talk about missing people in the national parks or state parks or whatever,
right? I don't get that. That's his shtick, and of course,
so defensive, dude. I mean, and it's like anybody, it's public information, dude. Anybody can talk about that, but they're like, oh, why are you talking about that? They get all like they're defending him or something. I mean, that's like they're rabid. I mean, I deal with that with another guy that has a Dogman show. Same thing. If you say something that he had that guest on there and blah blah blah, and somebody said you told a story from the Supernaturalist channel. I'm like, that guy gave me the same story that he gave him and that he gave Darkness Prevails. It's the same.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting the same stories. You don't own the rights to that story, and the only way I really think you can own the rights to a story is if you made it up. Isn't that correct? I mean,
Right. And the thing is here too, guys, listen, like, all the respect for all the hard work that Paulides does, that puts in, like, I know he works his butt off. He does what he does. Like, all the respect in the world for. That's why I would never touch upon his work. I wouldn't steal anything like that. That's his territory. But at the same time, it's open field, or anybody can research that stuff as well. So, but that is kind of his niche, and like he does it well. And it's like, yeah, like in that case, yeah, nobody can touch him because that's his thing and he does it good. So I don't necessarily think there needs to be another Paulides in that sense, just because he does what he does so well. I had a thing I was going to say, and I got dad brain, and so I can't remember exactly what I was going to add to what you're saying. It was really good. And now remind me what you were saying right before this. Well, it was so good.
Yeah, what I was saying though is like because somebody accused me, I've been accused of this a few times now. People jumping on and going to Reddit and flipping out because once again, Josh Turner, I'm going to use the voice. Josh Turner continues to use other people's stories and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? Because those people gave me the same story that they gave them. Like, how am I supposed to? Hold on, sir. Let me ask you a question. Did you give someone else this story? Then I can't use it. Good day to you. Goodbye. Like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not even going to bother because if this person wants to tell me the story, they're going to tell me the story. That happened to Tony Merkel, great friend of mine, and I'll hopefully get to meet him at the conference, Josh. This guy that has a very large Dogman show, this guy went on to his show. Well, when he went to the continuation of that, he went to Tony. Well, that other guy thinks he has the right to that guy and his story, and so he throws a hissy fit, and sends his minions after him like the flying monkeys, and so they go after him, and this guy's like, dude, I don't want to deal with you. I'm dealing with Tony. And so then, and it's like they have this territorial thing where I don't really give a crap. If somebody like me and you talked about this, that's why there's a free flow of information between me and you and between me and the NADP, because who cares? Like nobody's like, like they have, the NADP has been generous with me, with Jody Cook and Nick Valente and all the other people that are a part of that organization, D.A. Roberts and Jacobs. I've been really good friends with a lot of them, and they've been very forthcoming. And I appreciate that. And there's a free flow there. We don't have problems. But just once in a while, something will happen, where someone's like, no, those stories belong to me. I talked to those people and blah, blah, blah. But then when you talk to those people, they're like, yeah, I was working out and I just told them my story real quick. I didn't know they owned it now and own my soul. And now I have to donate blood to them. You know what I mean? Like I was talking to this lady and I told her what was said, and she was like, I barely talked to that person for 5 minutes and now they own my life, and they want my credit score and, the names of my children. And, what do I do for a living? I mean, it's like crazy, dude. These people get so, that's my story, and like, how is it your story? Unless you wrote it or something, or you have some kind of, you did some kind of creative writer or whatever it is, then how do you own the rights to that story? Did that person sign it over and tell you could have it and only you could use it? Because that's the only way that would really work in my mind. So someone says that kind of throws up a red flag to me. I mean,
right.
I've had people ask me to talk to my witnesses, and I'm like, sure, go ahead, dude. I mean, like, what do I care? I don't own their rights to their stories. They can talk to 1,000 podcasters and 1,000 authors, and and do whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's funny you touch upon that because there was. Okay, so with the NADP, right? For those that don't know, that's the North American Dogman Project. So I had reached out to them long ago, and I'm like, hey, I run What Lurks Beneath. Am I able to like use your guys' stories? And they're like, yeah, no, that's totally cool, right? Do whatever. And like even that was like the discussion. Like this was like years ago. I know it's the same guys that run it. Like I'm still nervous to like air an episode that has like one of those stories in it because I'm always afraid that I'm gonna have somebody who's like, that's my story, copyright strike, how dare you? And I'm like, well, yeah, but it was like it's on their platform, you know what I mean? Like it's like I have permission, I have the email, I can show you. And of course, so those of you that aren't in the game, with other narrators, a lot of times they're like, oh, well, you stole this from XYZ narrator, like, or I heard this before. And like Josh was saying, like a lot of times people will send their story to multiple narrators. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't get that. They just think you steal content. Try doing your own work, you thief. Yeah. You low life. I'm like, I've got it all. You have to explain. It's like, sir, that's not how it works. And of course, they never reply. They're never like, oh, you're right, my bad. It's just no response. So it's like, you just gotta whatever, Yeah,
you just gotta let them go and let them, and they'll harass you, and they'll run back to the person that they first heard it from. And I've even gotten other podcasters and authors and they've been like, so, I mean, I'm friends with a lot of people in this business, so they're just, industry, whatever you want to call this, the community. It's all of the above, but people they'll just be like, go ahead, I don't care. Most people I'm pretty cool with, and I'm pretty free flowing with my stories too. And I've had witnesses say, hey, do you mind if I tell this story? I was like, I don't own your story. You've told it to me. You can tell it to 1,000 people screaming from the rooftops. In fact, the more people hear it, the better, because for me, it's all working toward one overarching goal, and that's to get to the bottom of it.
Right, exactly.
I don't see why it has to be this big war, for stories. Me and Nick Valente talked about this on my show. He was like, dude, people that are like, I can't, if you can't get stories, you're just lazy, dude. Because there's a lot of them out there. I can get them standing in line at the grocery store, man. I got some the other day. This lady's like, yeah, I'll get in touch with you. And then she told me her story, I mean, it's just how it works.
I think it's for fear of the whole, like, oh, well, you stole that, and unfortunately in our field, there's people that'll do copyright strikes for that, cease, like, I'm talking like actual physical cease and desist over that kind of stuff. I mean, it's people get they get this ego thing going, and it's like they tell a story and they hear you tell it, even though if it's your own interpretation of the story, it doesn't matter. You told it, that's their story. They want you to take it down now. It might hurt their monetization. It could possibly hurt any income it becomes real cut and throat real quick. And I'm like, like listen, for those of you that don't know, my channel has a stupid amount of cryptid encounters on there because I've been doing this for like 3+ years now, and so I have a lot on there. I could literally care less if anybody went on there and like repurposed any of my stories for financial gain or for not. I don't care. I literally don't care. I know a lot of people aren't that way, and they're like, no, that's my content. I'm like, yeah, but like I even own it. So what? Like, so what? Like, I don't care. So I know people messaged me before. They're like, hey, this channel used your stories. So, so I always tell people, I'm like, you want to use my stories and like profit off it? I don't care. You want to take these stories and put it in your own book and sell it on Amazon? I don't care. Like, I do okay on YouTube. It doesn't matter. Like, you're not taking anything away from me. I don't care. So I know I'm probably the only guy besides you that has that opinion on it, but
No, there are a few others. There's not many, but like Barton, he's one, that was like, he was telling me that somebody was reading directly from one of his books on YouTube, and he was just like, oh well, like, he's not really. I think most of the people that we deal with, like that we're gonna be dealing with at the conference and stuff, they're usually pretty easygoing, unless you're just absolutely ripping them off. I mean, I don't really see any of them being like money hungry or whatever. That's why I chose the people I did, and that's not a knock on those that can't make it or the ones that I didn't talk to, whatever. That doesn't mean that I'm talking about you, that you're not that way or you're that way. I'm just saying that of the people that I chose, I chose people who weren't like really, people that, people like, and they have good reputations in the field and they do good work, and they're not like that kind of people, you know what I mean? And so oftentimes you get that, with people, and I've had other people tell me, oh, you better do this and you better do that and blah, blah, blah. And one guy, well, actually two in particular, one was on TV, and he talked to me like I was one of his underlings. I needed to give him a detailed report of my encounter. And I'm like, dude, I was like, when St. Smithens Day comes around, that's when I'll give you the report. That day I will do it, on St. Smithens Day. So just keep looking on your calendar. When it comes, I'll give you the report. And, of course, it never happened, but, because St. Smithens Day doesn't exist. And that's why I chose that day, because I'm never going to do that, because I don't let somebody pontificate to me, even if it means you're going to be on TV or you're going to do this or do that. I don't care. I'm going to do me. I don't need to be on TV. I don't need the money. I'm not trying to do this for money. I'm not, I think a lot of these people, it does come down to dollar signs. That's
it really does.
It really does. And once you get to a level where I know where you and Steve are at, you guys are at a level where
Steve is such a cool guy, by the way.
Steve
I just want to
cool, man.
He's such a cool guy. Yeah. I've only barely talked to him, but what a cool cat, man. He reminds me of like an old uncle that you could just sit and like talk with like for 4 hours.
He's just a chill dude, man. Yeah, very laid back. He's just a cool guy. And I've always liked Steve and his work, and reading his book, My Strange World. That was it's really good. I mean, it's an easy read, didn't take long, but it's good. And he talks about his experiences, and he is one of those people that like deserves where he's at. He's done good, and Josh, you're a young guy, but I think you're on the right track. You're on the right level. And you are a very, very smart young man. Like, I've talked to you on the phone, and you're a smart guy. Like, you know what you're doing, and you know what direction you want to be. And that's good to be at your age and be, God bless you with a brain. And that is the most important. And that's why I quit fighting when I was about your age, because, you get hit in the head enough times, and all you'll do is repeat yourself, like if you get hit in the head a few times, all you do is repeat yourself, I'm being serious. I have a lot of friends. That's not knocking any of my fighter friends either, but I've got a couple that I'm friends with, and it's hard because I'll talk to them, and they're looking for words and stuff, and I hate it. And I thought that could have been me if I would have stayed doing what I was doing, and I got out like I thought, what, this is I had somebody that talked to me, was an older guy, and he said, hey, unless you want this to be your career, and it's a short, it's like you got a window there, and then that's it, and if you overstay your welcome in the ring, you get bounced pretty hard. And so I had to make a choice. Am I going to keep training? Because I didn't even want to keep getting hit in the head, period. Right. Because eventually I wouldn't be able to do this. If I, and one of the things I was good at is even though I'm a big guy, is not getting hit. I was actually very good. And I was really quick-handed, so I had timing, I was good at what I did. But a lot of people, they just overstay their welcome, and so it's time to go. And then later in life, you don't really have any path. And so I thought, is that going to be me? Am I going to be one of these guys that can't remember where he put his keys? And you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a reality, man.
It is. And one of my friends, he tells me all the time, he lives up in Vegas now, but he's a retired fighter. I don't want to mention his name because I don't want to embarrass him or anything, but I hate when I talk to him and then he's fumbling for words. And I don't even want to get into it. But anyway, it hurts because, you know, that's where he's at, you know, and I'm glad that I stopped. But to be your age, you're my nephew's age, and he's graduating on the 16th, I guess Monday. He graduates from college. He got to get his architecture degree, and I'm very proud of him. And you know, and you got your show. It's huge, and you're doing such a great job. It's something to be proud of, and to be at your age, the whole world is ahead of you. You know what I mean? It's in front of you, and so I applaud you. I thank you for coming on tonight, and thank you for talking and entertaining everybody. You know, and folks, go and check out What Lurks Beneath. You know, and I can't deny. His channel absolutely dwarfs mine. Mine's like Mercury compared to the sun. Like it's so much bigger. But you do what you do, and you're really good at what you do. And I encourage everyone to go check it out. What Lurks Beneath. So Josh, I'm gonna let you go, man. But I really enjoyed talking to you. I always enjoy talking to you, and I hope to see you. We are gonna record between now and August. Of course, we'll do a set together. But I'm looking forward to seeing you at the convention. So that's going to be interesting.
Yes, buddy. Yes.
So everybody get your tickets. And, once Josh starts advertising on that big channel of him and Steve, the tickets are going to go fast. And they're already moving. So, we still got some, but get your tickets now. So you can see us there live and in living color there in person.
I will say this though, that my thing, I guess mission statement, whatever you want to call it, I'm like, if I can, get as big as possible, that is more of an outreach for all these people to get a voice for their story. And just to kind of bring awareness to the whole umbrella. You think because so many cryptozoology, paranormal channels on YouTube, they're not really that big. They're really small for the most part. And it makes me sad. You have horror narration channels, but I don't think people take those seriously. I think they're more like the creepypasta thing. And so then you have a channel like Steve's, which I'm like, I applaud him. I'm like, dude, that's you're getting to 200,000. There's a lot of people that hunger for this kind of thing. And so I'm like, if I can hit 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, I'm like, I want to expose these people's stories and just, even if people don't believe them, it's awareness, right? And bombard them with that information that wow, maybe there is something to all these stories. Maybe it's not just all, greatly written creepypasta. It's wow. And if I could open people's minds, just, I know it sounds cliche to say and new agey to say awaken them, or, get people woke up, but it's not woke up. I mean, but get people to wake up to what's going on, that then, maybe that'll help. And maybe that'll kind of help at least make people be more receptive to people who can genuinely come out and say listen, I had an experience I can't explain, and there's no logical reasoning you could use to figure it out. It's just, here's what it is. And instead of being mocked and called a lunatic and laughed at, actually, I had a lawyer who worked at a really big firm out of Las Vegas, I believe. It was I'm assuming it was Las Vegas. And he refused to tell me his name or his law firm because he's like, listen, and it was a while back, but he had this crazy UFO encounter. And he's like, I can't, my firm cannot know this is me. I will lose my job. And I remember reading that and just being like, man, that's heartbreaking that we're so cold-hearted as a society that we can't separate that from an actual employment. We have to witch hunt and be like, oh, this guy's mentally not fit for his job. He's lost all authority in his career. It's are you kidding me? It's so sad. And anyway, and to make a long story short, I'm just hoping that what I do can kind of help break that at least a little bit. So anyway, without giving a novella.
Well, and like I said, we'll see each other again, and we're going to be working together again. And so, everybody, Josh Nanocchio from What Lurks Beneath, check him out, man. You won't be disappointed. Trust me. I'm not going to send you somewhere where you can be like, "Oh, this sucks. Why did Josh put it line?
Why did you send me to this?
Why did you send me to Mordor?"
This guy's terrible.
All right, Josh. I'll see you later, bro.
All right, buddy. It was a pleasure seeing you all and talking to everybody. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. So that was Josh, a friend of mine, What Lurks Beneath. He's great what he does. One of the many folks you're going to see there Another person that may go to we're trying to get him to go to the conference, he's talking about it, is Roger from the LBL. I know me and Roger had our differences or whatever, but we ironed it out. You know, same thing happened to me and Marvin. We had our differences. And like I told him the same thing to Marvin. I give a shout out to Marvin Allen too. You're not my enemy. I have enemies. And you're not one of them. You're just somebody I had a disagreement with. You're not my enemy. I don't look at you that way. You made me mad, you know, and I verbally spar with people but I don't, whatever, it doesn't matter, you know, and if he is willing to come and talk and tell his story, and people can watch him talk in person and say this story, and they can draw their own conclusion. People kept telling me, you should take his stories down from your channel. Why? People can listen to the show and draw their own conclusions. I don't try to make people's minds up for them. You draw your own conclusions. Just like the weird crawler story. You draw your own conclusions. You know, there's 1,000 stories like that. People see weird stuff all the time. But folks, that's it for me tonight. Let me take these headphones off. I thank you so much for joining us here on Paranormal Round Table and being a part of the live stream. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, this coming week, we're doing Not Deer. If you don't know what a not deer is, somebody said, be mad if you want. I believe Roger. I'm not mad. If you believe him, you believe him. If you don't, you don't. It's all up to you, folks. I leave it to the listener to make heads or tails. You know, it's up to you. So here's the thing. We're doing Not Deer on Friday. And then after that, we're doing two weeks of the Hawaiian mythology and whatever with Kevin Panay. And he's a really nice guy. He's a native Hawaiian. And then after that, it's open. We're not real sure what we're going to do after that. We have a bunch of people that we're supposed to be working with and getting going. And if you've sent me a story and I haven't gotten to it, folks, I'm trying. Okay, I'm trying. Okay, I have. And my team is basically just people that I'm friends with and they work too. And we're trying to get them all sorted out so we can. But anyway, like I said, thank you for tuning in to Paranormal Roundtable. Go check out Josh. And you know, when you're waiting in between Tuesdays and Fridays, check him out. You won't be disappointed. All right, guys. Good night. Oh, don't forget to buy tickets. Go and ask your wife Camille for a ticket. Well, but don't take any drinks from me. Okay, folks, eating the Jello pudding pops.